Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live next door to a superstar? Imagine waking up, grabbing your morning coffee, and seeing, oh, I don't know, Marilyn Monroe tending to her garden? Sounds like a dream, right? Well, for one woman, it turned into a bit of a neighborhood nightmare, one that ended with a rather unique and, dare I say, brilliant form of revenge from Marilyn herself. This story takes us back to the early 1950s. Marilyn Monroe wasn't yet the global icon we remember today. But she was definitely on her way. She was a rising starlet, living in a modest apartment complex in Hollywood, just like many other aspiring actors. Her next-door neighbor was a woman who, let's just say, didn't quite appreciate the hustle and bustle that came with living next to a budding celebrity. Now, this neighbor had a very particular complaint. She worked during the day and needed her sleep at night. Marilyn, on the other hand, was often working late on set, or, more importantly for our story, practicing her lines at all hours. To be a great actress, you have to rehearse. And for Marilyn, that meant running lines over and over, trying to perfect her delivery. The neighbor was not a fan. She would pound on the thin walls, separating their apartments, shouting for Marilyn to be quiet. She'd leave angry notes on her door. According to Marilyn's friends, the complaints were constant and increasingly hostile. The neighbor apparently didn't care that this was Marilyn's job. She just wanted peace and quiet. It got to the point where Marilyn started to feel genuinely harassed in her own home. She was trying to build her career, and this constant negativity was a huge source of stress. You might think a star like Marilyn would just call her agent or a lawyer and have the problem taken care of, but that wasn't her style, especially not at this point in her life. She was still trying to prove herself, and she was known for her kindness and a desire to avoid confrontation whenever possible. So, instead of fighting fire with fire, she decided to get creative. This is where the story gets really good. Marilyn knew her neighbor worked a standard 9-to-5 job. She also knew the neighbor cherished her weekends, particularly her Saturday mornings, which she used to catch up on sleep. So, Marilyn hatched a plan. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, but it was pure genius. One Saturday morning, very, very early, while the sun was just beginning to rise, Marilyn started her revenge. But it wasn't what you think. She didn't throw a loud party or blast music. Instead, she started her acting lessons. But these weren't just any acting lessons. Marilyn, in her beautiful, breathy voice, began practicing her vocal scales. Imagine being woken up at 6 in the morning by the gentle, melodic sound of do-re-me-fode, so-la-so-la-t-do drifting through your wall. And she didn't just do it once. She did it over and over again for hours. She'd practice her enunciation, repeating tongue twisters like the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips with painstaking precision. Then, she moved on to her dance practice. Marilyn was famously dedicated to her craft, which included dancing. So, she put on her tap shoes. Yes, tap shoes. On a hardwood floor, in an apartment building, at dawn on a Saturday. Can you picture it? The gentle, rhythmic asterisk tap-tappa-tap asterisk echoing through the otherwise silent building. It wasn't loud enough to be a huge disturbance to the whole complex, but it was certainly loud enough to be incredibly annoying to the person on the other side of the wall who desperately wanted to sleep in. She would spend the entire morning from sunrise until noon practicing, singing scales, reciting lines from plays, and tap dancing across her living room. All the things she needed to do for her job, but all strategically timed for when it would most disrupt her neighbor's precious weekend rest. The best part? It was completely justifiable. If the neighbor complained, what could Marilyn say? "I'm so sorry, but this is my work. I have to practice, just like I have to practice at night, which you also don't seem to like. When would be a good time for me to work on my career?" It was a brilliant, passive-aggressive checkmate. She was getting her revenge by simply doing her job, but on her own terms. The neighbor's reaction isn't widely documented, but one can only imagine the slow-burning frustration. How do you complain about someone practicing their scales or tap dancing when it's literally their profession? The loud, angry banging on the walls reportedly stopped. The nasty notes disappeared from her door. It seems the neighbor finally got the message. A truce was silently called. This story is so perfect because it reveals a side of Marilyn Monroe that we do often hear about. We see the glamorous movie star, the vulnerable icon, but this story shows us her wit, her intelligence, and her quiet strength. She didn't need to yell or make a scene. She used her own talent and dedication as a weapon, turning the very thing the neighbor complained about into her tool for revenge. She fought back not with anger but with art. It's a reminder that Marilyn was more than just a beautiful face. She was a sharp, resourceful woman navigating a very tough industry. She handled a difficult situation with a kind of cleverness and grace that is just S.O. Marilyn. It's one of my favorite stories about her. A small, personal moment that speaks volumes about her character. She found a way to stand up for herself without compromising her own kind nature. And that, in itself, is So, the next time you're dealing with a difficult situation, maybe take a page out of Marilyn's book. Sometimes, the most effective response isn't the loudest one, but the most creative one. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this little-known story from Hollywood's golden age, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more tales from behind the silver screen. Let me know in the comments what you think of Marilyn's clever revenge. See you in the next video.